Johnny Waldron knocked McLean out twice.
Hi everyone, so this is Big Bad Johnny Waldron, ex-professional boxer, unbeaten in 23 unlicensed boxing matches. Johnny Waldron is recognised by many as being one of the greatest unlicensed fighters of all time. Contrary to his nickname, Big Bad Johnny Waldron, he was actually a family man, never involved in crime, worked all his life and never been to prison. So Johnny Waldron was born in the beautiful Surrey countryside. He lived on farms as a youngster, which gave him a real love for the countryside and nature. He took up boxing at 12 years old and he really excelled at the sport. He went on to win the junior ABAs twice, which is quite an achievement. So as a senior boxer, Johnny Waldron got to the ABA semi-final and nearly fought John Conte. John Conte actually won the ABA final in one of those years around that same sort of time. So as an amateur, Johnny was mixing it with the best. Johnny would work various different jobs. He always worked hard. He was actually trained as an agricultural engineer. He had a lot of mechanical work with HGVs and stuff like that. Johnny moved away from the countryside to London in 1971, where he actually met Muhammad Ali for the first time. And Muhammad Ali made, as he would do, made a huge impression on him. So whilst in London, Johnny joined the legendary Repton gym with Tony Burns and trained alongside the likes of, well, Ray Winston was there. Up and coming actor Ray Winston would train around the same time as Johnny. His amateur boxing career had really taken off. He was actually boxing for England. His dream was to get the ABA title, which he never did. But he won the regionals on 2 occasions, the London Championships, which is a good achievement in itself as well. When Johnny turned professional, I think he turned pro with Andy Smith in Cambridge, and he started sparring with Joe Guv'nor. And Joe Guv'nor obviously sparred with Cliff Fields, who would later go on to be another top unlicensed fighter. Johnny was 6'2". He weighed in around 12.5 stone. So he was actually a light heavyweight initially at the beginning. But he did struggle to make the weight, so ideally he would have been a cruiserweight. Johnny joined Terry Lawless's stable over at Canning Town. His friends there were John H. Tracy and Sylvester Mitty, good fighters, legendary fighters as well. A really top quality stable there. You had Charlie Magri, Jimmy Batten, Jim Watt, John L. Gardner, Maurice Hope. So boxing around with those type of fighters was like a real boost and massive learning experience for Johnny. Johnny's first fight was on the undercard of Joe Guv'nor versus Richard Dunn for the British heavyweight title. So a really good build to be on for your first fight. Johnny won on points in his first fight. Both fighters got cut. Carlton Benoit, his name was. Both fighters got cut, but Johnny got the win. So 8 fights later, Johnny's won all of his fights, apart from 1 draw. And he was now the Southern Area champion as well. In his first defence of the Southern Area title, he was matched against none other than Dennis Andries. And obviously Andries was a rugged, tough fighter, and they had a proper battle, real good battle. Johnny got cut later on and the fight got stopped in round 10. So it was a bit of a devastating loss for Johnny, but he wasn't to know that Dennis Andries would go on to be a future champion, a world champion as well. So no shame in that loss, but it effectively ended Johnny's career because he suffered an eye injury as well during the fight. So that was the end of his pro career after 3 years, which was a devastating blow to him really. So by this point, Johnny and his wife Wendy, they had 4 children at this point. They went on to have 5 children, and they loved taking them away on holidays to the seaside and Woolacombe and Clacton and places like that. But Johnny was still living in London, so it was nice to get away from that and get into the country. But he still had the passion to fight, and he got into the unlicensed boxing. And the 2 top fighters were Lenny McLean and Roy Shaw. He was in the unlicensed boxing. He sparred none other than Billy Aird. Billy Aird, good professional. He actually fought and beaten Cliff Fields in a professional fight, and Billy Aird was actually referee in my second pro fight. So I put some footage up of that. Johnny also sparred Funzo Banjo, Winston Allen from Wales, and Alan Tompkins as well, amongst others. He had many good sparring partners. Johnny's first fight as an unlicensed fighter ended in a draw against ex-pro Larry Paul, who was a good fighter as well, ex-professional. His second fight, unlicensed, was against Johnny Clark, and that was a tough fight as well. Johnny got the win on that. Johnny got a points win on that one. He had a rematch with both men, and he won on points in both times on both of them fights, so still unbeaten. So following that, Johnny had a win over Brian Hall, and then there was a phone call to fight the fearsome fighter Lenny McLean, and Johnny accepted. Now, Johnny was told by the promoters, take it easy, this is Lenny's show, don't go over the top, make it look good. And apparently Lenny was meant to get the win on this one. Johnny was told, yeah, make it look good, Lenny will get the win, but you'll get the rematch. On fight night against Lenny McLean, the crowd were hostile as they were all towards Lenny, and Johnny was there with very few supporters. Nosha Powell announced the fighters to get into the ring. Johnny got in, Lenny got in. Round one, strangely, Lenny didn't attack for some reason. He just moved around the ring, throwing a few jabs out. And Johnny threw a few jabs out, so nothing really happened in round one. As Johnny went back to the corner, his corner man, Mickey Holland, said to him, you've got to make this look a bit more like a fight. So as he's come out for the second, Lenny McLean's come out and said to him, hit me, and started shouting, hit me, and waving his glove to him, like, hit me. So they've made it look a bit more lively. Lenny was shouting, your granny hits harder than you, and and all this. So Lenny's then steamed in with a savage attack on Johnny, backed him up to the ropes. Johnny was getting knocked from side to side by the ferocity of Lenny's attack. Johnny's then thought, right, sod this, I've got to try and keep him off me with a shot, with a little quick shot. And he's thrown a left hook to try and slow Lenny down. He's actually caught Lenny nicely on the chin with a little left hook, and without realising it, Lenny's been knocked out on the floor, and he's fell right into where Roy Shaw was sitting. So the crowd has gone mental because obviously Lenny's knocked out on the floor. Roy Shaw's got in the ring, Joe Carrington jumped in the ring, Cliff Fields jumped in the ring, and Lenny was on the floor. Lenny regained consciousness and started hitting anyone around him, even the referee. Lenny was hitting a ref. And Johnny Waldron by that time had got out of the ring. A little while later on that night, Lenny had calmed down a bit. He actually offered to buy Johnny a pint, and Johnny apologised for what had happened because it wasn't meant to happen that way. And Lenny sort of said, oh, don't worry about it. But Johnny said he could see deep down Lenny wasn't happy about it because it wasn't meant to go that way. So Johnny carried on training, carried on sparring. One particular day, a young middleweight came in the gym to spar with all the heavyweights. This young middleweight loved to spar the heavyweights. Apparently he was tough as anything. He had a massive punch on him as well, this middleweight, and it turned out to be future champion Nigel Benn. So yeah, he was around that scene at that time as well. So a rematch was set for Johnny Waldron and Lenny McLean, fight number 2. This time it was going to be a real fight, and Johnny trained hard. Lenny was up for the fight. All respect to Lenny because he did like a challenge, and he was at a disadvantage being not from a boxing background. He's fighting ex-pros, so you've got to give credit to Lenny for fighting these men because they were ex-pros. Anyway, second fight's happened. This time Lenny's come out aggressively from the start, and Johnny's caught Lenny with a nice left hook combination, floored Lenny. Johnny's actually said it was one of the hardest punches he's ever landed on anyone. And he couldn't believe that Lenny managed to get up. Lenny started to get up. Johnny thought that was it. Lenny's got up off the floor, and then he was unsteady, but he's still trying to fight. So you've got to respect Lenny's fighting heart, because Johnny said most men would have been asleep for a week after that. So you've got to respect the fighting heart of Lenny. Lenny was coming forward. The fight got stopped because Johnny landed a few more shots, and Lenny was just out on his feet, I think, at that point. Credit to Lenny. They bumped into each other again in Victoria Park. Lenny was jogging towards Johnny, and Johnny was jogging as well, and they both stopped, had a handshake, had a catch up, and Lenny said, let's do a third fight. Johnny always said he respected the fact that Lenny would still up for a challenge, because it was his hardest unlicensed fight against Lenny. He said he gave him the most trouble. Goes to show Lenny was the top fighter in that game. I've got to give a shout out here to Ray Hill as well. Ray Hill was around at that time. Ray Hill was lined up to fight Lenny, and he used to spar with them all, Lenny and Roy and Cliff Fields and everyone. So shout out to Ray Hill. Ray's got a channel as well. I'll try and put a link in the description to Ray's channel. The one fighter that Johnny Waldron rated above all, and this is his own words, was Cliff Fields. Johnny said he does not like to call that fight. If they ever fought, he would have loved to have fought him, because it would have been a massive challenge. And he really rated Cliff, and he would not want to say who would win out of them. Obviously, everyone knows Cliff was a legend in the unlicensed game. Very tough, very big, very, very strong. So, yeah, a lot of respect there between them. Johnny sadly split with his wife, Wendy, in 1989. By this time, they had five children together. Adam, Benjamin, Joseph, Jamie, who I've got to thank for getting in touch with me. Coincidentally, exactly when I was going to do a video about Johnny, Jamie got in touch, and we've had some good chats on the phone. So thank you, Jamie. And the youngest child, Anna, who was the youngest out of the lot. Johnny had a few more unlicensed fights. One of these fights was against Julius Francis, the future British and European champ, and someone who fought Mike Tyson and beat Danny Williams, the man who beat Mike Tyson. So Johnny always says he beat the man who beat the man. And I know both Julius and Danny, and yeah, both top fellas, top men. Johnny actually won the fight against Julius as well. Apparently it was a really good fight by all accounts. Julius has even admitted that Johnny knocked his tooth out. So now that Johnny had finished his boxing career and his children were growing up or grown up, he started drinking for the first time in his life, because he'd never really drank before. Started drinking in his 40s, and I know only too well how this goes, and sadly it ended up taking over his life. Social drinking a couple of times a week became almost every day. Friends and family were worried, and he admits himself that he developed a paranoia, which I know as well, and all issues regarding the drink, where he would get aggressive with people and think that people were out to get him, all drink related. He managed to stay off of it for quite a while, but sadly it came back again and he started again. But during his time he was doing painting, and he was doing door work as well. He got stabbed a few times on a door and had some hairy situations. He was lucky to survive, actually. Johnny would occasionally get asked to get involved in certain criminal activities, sort of the intimidation type stuff, or maybe going around to do a job on someone. Never sat right with Johnny. It is not in him to do that. He's not that type of person. He stuck to his principles, and he always refused to get involved in that. So he kept his honour, and he didn't get involved in any criminal activities. I was lucky enough to have a brief talk with him on the phone a couple of weeks back with Johnny and Jamie, his son, and thank you again, Jamie, for helping out with everything, and I appreciate that. And I hope you all enjoyed hearing the story about Big Bad Johnny Waldron, one of the greatest unlicensed fighters of all time, and a man who twice beat legendary fighter Lenny McLean. Please hit the thumbs up and please subscribe, everyone. It really helps with the channel. Please leave a comment as well. And so yeah, all the best, everyone. Take care.